listening to StreetClothes, the podcast that takes you beyond the four walls of the hospital and into the lives of clinicians who live passionately no matter what happens to spark their hearts. Each week, we dive into the hobbies and side hustles that refuel the clinical spirit, recharge the mind, and remind us all that there's a big, beautiful world out there to keep exploring. StreetClothes, because life happens outside of scrubs.
Hey there, StreetClothes. Today, we're spinning into the world of woodturning. Now, we're not going to talk about trees spinning around in the forest all by themselves. We're going to be diving into the craft that's been around since ancient Egypt. We'll talk more about that maybe later. And it's still turning heads today. What exactly is woodturning? Well, imagine a piece of wood spinning faster than you in your head after a 12-hour shift at the hospital. All the while, a skilled artisan is shaping it with chisels and gouges. It's kind of like pottery, but with wood, and the results could be anything from a sleek kind of salad bowl to an intricate art piece that'll make your jaw drop. Now, you might be thinking, isn't that just for old guys in their garages? Well, you got the garage part right for some folks, but young and old and all kinds of different walks of life, this hobby is taking the country by storm. It's experiencing a renaissance. More and more people are getting hooked on the lathe, and we'll learn what that is here in a moment. From young artists to retirees looking for a new hobby. Speaking of lathes, did you know that the ancient Egyptians invented the two-person lathe around 1300 BC? Fast forward a few millennia, and now we've got lathes that can spin wood at mind-boggling speeds. That's faster than some of the centrifuges in our laboratories in our hospitals. But woodturning isn't just about speed. It's about precision, creativity, and sometimes serious upper body strength. A dedicated woodturner will spend hours each week at their craft, and that ends up being some serious arm workout, folks. Now, here's a fun fact. The world record for the largest turn wooden bowl is big enough to bathe a baby elephant. Kind of random, I know, but that's what it is. But don't worry, most woodturners stick to more manageable sizes. The most popular items are bowls, and then a close number two is pens. Yes, the pens that you write your love letters with, right? Handcrafted wooden pens are a hot commodity these days, and with many that can fetch a pretty penny. But it's not also all about the end product. There's a whole process here. Many woodworkers are in it for the relaxation. Engaging in crafts like woodturning has been shown to significantly reduce stress and improve mental well-being. So the next time that you're feeling burnt out after a long shift, maybe try turning a bowl instead of breaking one. Hey, you got a wooden pen. I love that. All right, woodturning is also riding the eco-friendly wave. Many woodturners are using reclaimed or salvaged wood in their projects. One person's fallen tree turns into another person's future masterpiece. It's like the ultimate recycling program. So, to all the listeners out there that are thinking about giving woodturning a spin, after this episode, we hope you go for it. You might just turn up a new passion. And remember, whether you're wielding a scalpel or a gouge in surgery or in the garage, precision and patience are key. Keep on turning, everyone. So, Joseph, I expected to see you covered in sawdust.
No, not today. Not today. But it could happen.
Is your woodturning, do you do it on like specific days of the week, or is it just kind of whenever the inspiration hits you?
Whenever I have time. Sometimes I might get inspired or have an idea outside of when I'm actually in front of my machine, but No, it's when I have time that I'll actually work on it.
And is it ever like in the morning, or is it always in like the evenings, or I guess on weekends maybe?
Yeah, weekends mostly now. Evenings are kind of challenging just because I have a little baby at home. So ever since he was born, I have not had as much time to work on that when I get home. But yeah, most of it's just working when I can on the weekends.
Have you made any baby toys?
No, but my son's birthday is coming up in September, and my wife has asked me, and I have agreed to make him a birthday gift. So I need to make a cup, and then she also asked me to make a small dish. So haven't done that yet. But yeah.
But no hammers, no like big wooden mallets or anything.
No, not yet. No.
Yeah. Every little boy needs a good, like, large wooden hammer to play around the house with.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen those like little wooden pin games, but they like come with like the wooden pins, and then like you hit one pin down, and then the other pin like pops up somewhere else on the game.
Oh, that's cool. No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's pretty nifty. But that little wooden hammer, man, you get hit by that, you're gonna remember.
Probably. I have noticed that he. I know that if I gave him something like that, he would just run around smacking everything. Just because he already kind of does smack everything. It's almost like he's testing over and over and over again if something's solid or not. Like maybe it's solid. It was solid before, but I better smack it again. So
yeah, that little boy energy is really curious when compared. Like I've got two sons and then a youngest daughter, and then we got another daughter on the way now. Like comparing them to each other is really interesting when it comes to how they play, what they hit, and even the brothers are rubbing off on the sister a little bit. And I'm like, that's not like how she normally acts. That's just how she's acting because you guys are winding her up tight.
That's funny.
A lathe can rotate wood at incredibly high speeds, turning rough blocks into smooth, polished pieces at a flick of a wrist. It's a mix of science and art where precision matters. Different types of wood have unique characteristics for turning. For example, softer woods like pine or fir are easier to carve, but harder woods like oak or walnut provide a much more refined, durable finish. This type of variation challenges woodturners to adapt their skills based on the material that they're using. Believe it or not, woodturning is considered one of the safest forms of woodworking. While woodworking generally carries risk, woodturning can be relatively safe when done with proper precaution. Injuries are much less frequent compared to other forms of woodworking, largely because the tool stays stationary while the wood rotates. So yeah, how long have you been woodturning for now?
Roughly 6 years. Roughly six years.
It's all in your garage, or you got something like a shed like set up? Where do you do this at?
It's in the garage. If I had a shed that had power, I probably would. But for the most part, I have to be able to share my space of wood turning with my vehicles and everything else I need to do in my garage.
So if people live close to you, they can tell your car because it's the one that's covered in sawdust shaving.
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can occasionally. Yeah.
Okay. And now, how did you get into this again? It's like, this isn't like a family thing, right? Like you just kind of stumbled into it on your own.
Growing up, my dad was a hobbyist woodworker and still is, but he makes a lot of large piece furnitures and picture frames, beds and buffets and standalone pantries. And I like woodworking, but I wanted to do woodworking on a budget. And I also really, really like playing chess. And I've had a dream for a long time to make my own chess set. And one of the main ways you can make chess pieces or chessmen is to turn them, whether you're turning it on a metal lathe or a wood lathe. Typically, the majority of chess pieces are turned on a wood lathe. So I thought, well, why don't I just try for this goal of making my own chess set and get into woodworking by buying a lathe and start wood turning? Just because, yeah, it was a good matchup of my different desires and interests.
Well, so let's kick it off here and just start with what this hobby is, wood turning. That may be a phrase that folks are not that familiar with. There's some hobbies out there, hiking and, fishing, like that's a pretty straightforward thing. But when someone says wood turning, there could be, I don't know, a couple of different things that come to mind. But as you describe this hobby to your friends and family, Joseph, where do you start?
Yeah, most of the time I just start by saying I like to do woodworking. And if they get curious, then I'll kind of dive into what wood turning is. And if I were to try and describe it really basically, it would be I have a machine that I stick a piece of wood into it and it spins it around and around and around really, really fast. And I take tools and I put the tools up into the wood and it shapes the wood. So that's how I would try and describe it on a super basic level.
And so the machine itself, what is it called?
It is called a wood turning lathe or just a lathe.
Yeah. And is a lathe always something that turns? I mean, is that that's a technical term for something that spins something else that you carve out of, I guess? I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, you can use it in other senses, like a metal lathe where you can turn and machine metal parts on a metal lathe. But in general, a lathe is always kind of referred to a machine that spins the object you're trying to create.
Yep. For someone who's never seen a lathe, and I think I don't know if I've ever seen one in person. I've seen them on TV shows. Aaron, what's that one? Is it This Old House? The guy's always doing renovations. That's probably 80s. Yeah. And then maybe Tool Time. Maybe there was a lathe on some episodes of Tool Time.
Well, if there was a lathe on Tool Time, then it was obviously not operated correctly. So
yes,
yeah.
They. I remember it. They vividly illustrated how it can be kind of dangerous, and they said, when operating a lathe, make sure you're not wearing long, baggy clothing. And of course, he's wearing a long flannel shirt, and it gets caught in the lathe, and it rips the shirt right off of him and spins around the lathe. So.
I think I remember that episode now that you say that. Because ripping it off of Al Borland's chest, that's something that you don't forget as a young child.
I did not.
Hey, you can go back and rewatch it these days. It's on Disney Plus.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll have to check that out. We just watched The Lion King, this past weekend. And of course, I didn't know for the longest time that, one of the sons on Tool Time was the voice of The Lion King. And I should know his name. He was like the little
Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Yes. Yeah. The teen heartthrob back then. But anyways, let's not get off track.
I'm sorry.
Where were we? So, for people who haven't seen this, Joseph, how do you describe this piece of machinery?
I would describe it as it's got a motor, and the motor spins a special type of drive that you either smash the wood up into it and you jam the piece of wood up into the drive, or the drive actually holds the wood itself. So the motor is spinning the drive, and you either smash the wood up into it so it gets stuck into it, or you clamp down on the actual piece of wood.
Does it have spikes or something that connects it to the, you said, smash it up against it? Is there something that holds it?
Yeah, so the other end of the lathe, it slides along the bed of the lathe, and you're able to crank the wood up into the motor, the drive portion of the actual motor. Man, I'm looking at it right now, and I'm like, yeah, you do these things, and I'm struggling with my words because I don't always talk about what I do. But yeah, the motor has different kinds of drives that you can choose to use. And one of them it's called a stub drive. And the other end of the lathe, you're able to crank and push the wood up into the stub drive that has all the spikes on it.
Is the lathe always like the ones I've seen in movies and videos and such? They're like laying horizontal. Is that the standard lathing position, or can you lathe also vertical or other angles?
Well, when you get into machining, they have different angles that you can do that on. But for wood turning, you're always going to want to have your lathe horizontal, just because it's easier for you to present the tool to the wood because of how it's rotating, because you need a tool rest to put your tool on so that it can be supported. And that's easier to do when the lathe is horizontal.
Makes sense. So you told a little bit about your origin story being chess and kind of the drive of, hey, I want to make my own little pieces here. And then this goes into, okay, in order to make my own little pieces, I need to get into wood turning. There's other ways maybe to make chess pieces, right? There's 3D printing nowadays, which we'll probably talk to somebody on the show at some point about 3D printing. There's whittling. I've actually made a couple of chess pieces myself whittling, and I got the scars on my fingers to prove it. But, why the connection to wood turning in particular and, pursuing that kind of introduction here with the chess?
Yeah, I think it's because the main style of chessmen is it's called the Staunton style. And it was, really made in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s. And that style it's the quintessential style of chess pieces. And I really like the shape of those a lot. The different curves, the different points that it moves to, each different piece has what I find to be something very attractive about it. And I can't recreate that, what I would call beauty in a chess piece, any other way other than on a lathe. You can make chess pieces, in lots of different abstract styles, and you could 3D print them. But, my main way that I wanted to do that would be wood turning, just because I like wood.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about wood in a second, but I want to go through the typical day of a wood turning process, right? So you wake up in the morning, it's a Saturday, and you're like, I'm gonna go get dusty. So what's that process look like from beginning to end?
Yeah. Well, it actually really begins, a year or two or more prior to that Saturday morning, which is getting the actual wood. You can go and buy it, but one of my favorite things about wood turning is being able to see the wood at site, in situ, in the forest, and then eventually get a piece that I find attractive out of it. So, multiple years prior to actually turning the wood, I like to harvest the wood. So occasionally I will scour Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, for someone saying, hey, free wood. And
so you're the guys that do that, because I've seen those ads. I'm like, who's just going out and getting this random free wood?
Yeah. I will, if they take a good enough picture, I can kind of tell what kind of wood it is and whether or not I should go bother with it. Because there are some woods that shape better on the lathe than others. If it's something that I might like a type of hard maple or a type of oak, and we all hope for walnut, but for the most part, I'm gonna look. Yeah, I know, right? For the most part, I'll occasionally look for that kind of stuff, and if they're advertising free wood, and I can tell that it's just recently been cut, then I will go and try and collect it. That's one way that I can get the wood, and the other way is actually going to a forest and cutting down a tree, or on your own property, cutting down your own tree. Being able to get the wood and cut it down is part of what I find fun about it, just because I need to be able to recognize where in the tree I want to try and get a piece of wood, because different portions of the tree can yield different kinds of interesting results, especially if I have an idea in my mind, if I want to create a vase or a bowl on my lathe. Different ways of cutting and harvesting the wood can yield different kinds of results. So I think that's what I kind of find fun and challenging about harvesting the wood, is trying to make sure I'm getting the maximum amount of size I can out of the tree that I'm trying to harvest, and also trying to think through, well, what kind of piece do I want to make out of this? Because, I've made a chainsaw cut here, and I can already see there might be a lot of figure or interesting grain pattern to this wood. I think if I make another cut here, I can harvest a large bowl or a large vase. I find that just kind of fun to do.
So one of my fears with wood turning is like the fact that your hand can get like caught in the, like when you have the tool in your hand and it starts to turn and it hits the thing and it like throws out of your hand. Now I know that there's like rests and holds to maximize the improbability of that, but do you mainly work with like cylindrical pieces, or do you have like more chunky pieces like burl or anything like that you've ever worked with that are kind of like they're more intimidating when it comes to like starting the process?
Yes, starting the process is always intimidating. I think early on when I first started wood turning, that intimidation was much, much higher, and for good reason, because slight movements of your hand and pushing too hard with the tool to try and take a more aggressive cut can result in something quite disastrous and scary and frightening, especially with how fast it can happen. The accidents will happen faster than you can even react. So yeah, I think there is a lot of intimidation, especially early on when I first got started, which I haven't had any terrible accidents, nothing terrible, but sometimes pieces can be a lot harder to turn and more challenging. And one kind of bowl that I've tried to turn a couple times has been the most challenging, where you're turning a piece of wood in a way where the tool isn't always touching the wood, and it's maybe touching around half the time. So it makes that really satisfying noise on the YouTube videos of a chunk, 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 chunk. And that noise means there's a portion where that wood is spinning around and there's nothing touching the tool. And if you push a little bit too hard during that void or that space when the wood is spinning back around, that amount of material that you're now going to take off because you pushed a little bit too hard because there was nothing pushing back on you will take a much more aggressive cut and cause the wood to either come out of the lathe and fly out, or cause the tool to get flipped up into the wood. That style of bowl is attractive, but is a lot more hard to turn and requires an obnoxious amount of patience early on to try and get it to the right shape.
So a couple years before, you're out there looking at trees and just visualizing, hey, that looks like a bishop to me, and that's a pawn, and that is queen or a bowl or a cup. And you visualize this, you pay for it or you get it for free, you're harvesting, it's back in your studio, also known as your garage.
Yeah.
And then you're ready to potentially, I don't know, are you ready to sit down with this wood yet or not? Or is there more steps before we actually get into the process?
Well, after you've cut down the tree, you have to try and prevent the tree from drying out too fast. So when you cut down the tree and you make your main cuts, you have to try and seal the ends of the wood to slow down the drying process, because if it dries too fast, the wood will become more unstable and actually crack. And if you crack the wood, you're going to have to add some steps later on how you're wanting to turn it, because that crack can be so bad that it might destroy your piece on the lathe and you might not get something out of it. So you're going to try and prevent cracks as much as possible by sealing the wood. And then once you've sealed the wood, it can slowly dry, and that could take a year or two. Generally, they say for every inch of wood, you should try and wait a year. So if your wood is 2 inches by 2 inches in square, or it's, a 2-inch radius or 4 inches diameter, you might want to wait 2 or more years to try and even turn that wood. Because once you turn the wood, if there was a large amount of moisture left over, the shape can change on you and the wood will actually move. So you might have had it perfectly round right when you turned it fresh off the tree. If you wait longer, that roundness will come out of round and it will change its shape, which most of the time people are trying to avoid that. So you wait a long time after you harvest the wood to help it acclimate to your shop so that it dries and that the movement that the wood undergoes is minimized, so that when you actually turn the wood, there's not a lot of shape change to it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, that long. It's like this hobby. And I mean, we ain't even into the cutting part, right? But I'm just thinking,
Right.
like, you're telling me I can go find the perfect piece of wood. I'm like, this is going to make an awesome vase in 6 years.
Yep. Sometimes. Yeah. So I have a few pieces of wood that I still have from, 5 years, 6 years ago, that I still haven't made anything with, but it's ready to go. And I have some pieces of wood that are 2 years old. And I have a piece that's about a month old. And it's just trying to get material in stock ahead of time so that on that Saturday morning when I have some time to make something, I have something there to make it with. So I enjoy that aspect of wood turning, is harvesting the wood. But, when it comes to Saturday and I have a piece of wood, generally the wood is a shape or orientation that I know that I'm only going to make one kind of thing out of it, like a bowl or a vase, but not both of them. So yeah, the first step is just getting it round, and that's generally the easiest part. But once you get it round, then you have to start shaping it to what you want, whether it's a bowl with a rounded edge or a bowl with a very sharp edge to the top. One thing that I actually also have enjoyed about wood turning is trying to recreate shapes that I find attractive. And one of the things that I try hard to do is actually look at shapes of vases and bowls and think that is a good shape or that is not a good shape. And so walking through antique stores or museums, I'll look at a bowl or a vase and I think, that is something I want to try and recreate. I like that shape. Or this other shape is not quite as attractive, but this other shape is even more attractive. So trying to recreate those shapes has been a lot of fun for me. Occasionally I'll try and pull something from antiquity, like the different famous named shapes of Greek or Roman bowls and vases. Trying to recreate those has been a lot of fun for me.
So let's talk tools. We've talked a little bit about the equipment, like the lathe itself, but obviously there's a little bit more that comes into play. Like you've referenced some tools to at least the risk around, drop them or taking too much off. But yeah, what is kind of the armory or the set of tools that a traditional wood turner would have or want?
You're going to have your lathe. And then you're going to have some means of mounting the wood to the lathe, which most wood turners are going to have an attachment to their lathe called a chuck. And that chuck is really just going to clamp down onto the wood and allow you to turn bowls and shapes that you can hollow it out. So one extra accessory that you'll have to have is a chuck that will squeeze the wood so that the motor can spin it around. Another tool, the basic tools you're going to have are your chisels and gouges, scrapers and things like that. That's the actual tool that's going to be removing the wood to create your shape that you're wanting. Early on, I went to the super budget hardware store that we have in America, and I bought the cheapest dang set of chisels I could buy. And when you buy those gouges and chisels, you have to sharpen them because your wood is going to dull your tool. So I also had to buy a grinder to shape my tool so that it could actually be sharp and sharpen it. So those are called traditional gouges and chisels, and they are hard. And I have had a lot of difficulty trying to learn them because there's really subtle ways that you have to move your arm and your hand and to move the tool and to where you're placing it in relationship to the wood and where your tool rest is. There's so many variables that go into it. And a lot of people get a lot of satisfaction out of that. And I was finding it so hard. I was getting a lot of catches where a catch is where my tool catches the wood, stops it. And because of the force, it would either force the tool into the wood, take a big chunk out of it. The wood would fly off my lathe and who knows, well, a few directions, but mostly at me. Traditional tools have been a lot of headache for me to try and learn how to use because they just have so many variables that go into using them properly and getting good results out of them. So after doing a lot of research and talking to different wood turners, I found that carbide tip tools are much easier for me to learn how to use, where I'm just pushing it into the wood for the most part. And using the shape of the carbide tip allows me to then know how it's going to behave when I push it into the wood. And that's about it. There's no other crazy variables about how high the tool rest is and how you're swinging the end of the tool and how sharp is it and what's the angle of the bevel of the tool. It's just push the tool into the wood and get your shape. Once I bought those tools, it was much faster for me to actually make something that I had in mind. And I had a lot more enjoyment and satisfaction out of that just because, the entry level for actually making a shape that I wanted to was much, much easier. So the traditional tools of a wood turner, like gouges and chisels and skews, those I've tried to move away from just because they make modern tools that have some improvements over.
So have you achieved your goal of making your chess set yet?
No, I'm intimidated by my own goal just because when I started making the pawns first, and, I quickly realized in order to make the set look attractive, I'm going to have to make 16 pieces look nearly as identical as I possibly can. And after making a few of them, I would realize pretty quickly that 1 millimeter off and my eye is catching it. And if I'm playing with a chess set, I don't really want a millimeter or two off of my pawns because I just don't want that in my chess set that I'm trying to make. So I've just started to take a step back and, write out my exact process step by step by step. And then once I write out my entire process for making it and including the measurements where I need to measure that, once I write all of that out, I can then repeat that from one Saturday to the next because there's a big gap between when I might be able to turn. I don't want to forget a step or a measurement. Right now, I have the steps written out for the pawn. It's just a matter of actually going and doing it.
So does it take like about a day to make a pawn?
No, I think if I actually went over and made one with some of the wood that I have, I think I could make one pretty quickly, 30 minutes maybe, to just get the shape. Oh, wow. Not finish it, okay. But to get the shape.
Okay. So let's talk finishing because we've talked a little bit about, hey, like we're taking all the wood off or getting the turning done, and then you just kind of alluded to that's not quite the end of the process. So once it comes off, well, I mean, does it come off the lathe to finish, or is the finishing actually happening on a lathe, but with different kinds of equipment or chemicals, or kind of speak to that?
It all depends. And, part of me wants to do a finish that's easy, repeatable, doesn't require a ton of stinky equipment. I don't want to have a fume hood in order to put a finish on. I don't want to have to wear a mask. So it's part of me has been enjoying searching for that finish that I want to use that's very forgiving. And you can do some of the finishing on the lathe, but one of my favorites is a tung oil finish. Tung is the type of tung oil finish. And it's very easy to do. You put it on, you let the wood soak it up, you wipe off the excess, and then you rub it a little bit more to make sure that you've gotten all the excess off. And then you just wait a week or two and repeat the process. It creates a very satin finish in the end once you've created those layers of tung oil. That one's pretty easy. Another finish that I've recently enjoyed is actually buffing the wood and applying a wax finish, which creates a more of a polished, glossy look that is also very forgiving, because if I mess it up, I just bump back in the steps and just repeat the previous step, which doesn't take too long. It's just a buffing process. I find that pretty fun.
So, Joseph, let's do a couple of rapid fires here. So what's your top 3 favorite kinds of wood? You've kind of alluded to walnut. Is that going to top your list, or is there one that's on top of that?
I think my favorite out of everything is Osage orange, also called hedge. So the trees that produce those big, round, yellowy green hedge apples, that wood is probably my favorite, only because when you cut it right off the tree, it's this bright yellow. And when you're turning it, it creates this terrific golden yellow sawdust. And over time, that oxidation of the wood will go from a yellow color to sort of a toasted brown or a golden brown look to the wood. And it's very hard and it finishes really, really nicely. So I think that's my favorite wood, just because, I don't know, it's just easy to get a hold of and has a lot of good positives about it.
All right, that's number 1. So I asked for 3. What's your 2 and 3?
Another favorite I have is oak, just because it's another hardwood. And one fun thing about oak is you can actually turn it black by just applying a type of acid to it. So oak is, everybody kind of thinks of oak as just this blondie kind of brown wood, but it's a really neat process to create a type of iron acetate, I think is what it's called. You take vinegar and you stick a piece of steel wool in it and you let it sit there for about a week, and the vinegar dissolves the steel wool into itself. And that solution can be applied to oak, and it turns the oak very, very dark black. I enjoy oak because I have that ability of easily creating a very, very dark and black look to it.
All right, Joseph, if you were to guess how many views the hashtag woodworking has on TikTok today, what would you say?
Woodworking on TikTok just today, 100 million.
Higher.
Higher? Oh, man. 200 million?
Was that woodworking or wood turning?
Oh, this is woodworking. We're going to do wood turning next, but this is woodworking. Okay. Yes, woodworking. Sorry.
Woodworking, 2 billion.
Higher.
Higher than 2 billion? Goodness. 5 billion?
47.6 billion views on that woodworking hashtag.
In the last 24 hours?
No. This is probably like, total hashtag views.
Okay.
I was since 2020. All right. So wood turning only on TikTok. What'd you guess? How many views on this hashtag?
10 billion.
You went for it. This is like my wife. Like, she comes home, she's like, guess how much I spent on this? And I'm always guessing high or way too low. And she's like, no, I spent more than that. And it's just like, come on now. I didn't understand the game. Yes. Wood turning on TikTok, 1.7 billion views on this hobby that we've been talking about. That's crazy. Okay. So, Joseph, we got your number 1, got your number 2. What is your number 3 type favorite wood out there to turn?
I think my third favorite type of wood to turn would be a type of cedar. Where I grew up, it's really common to get like a junk cedar tree growing in the fields, and they don't look very good. They are scrubby looking. They are needing constant pruning from most of the farmers and whatnot. They're growing out in their fields instead of on the tree line. So I think that my third favorite is the cedar tree, just because if I get some, I know that someone, was able to clear their field and, it was useful for them to remove the tree. Now I get the added benefit of using the wood, and it's an aromatic wood. So it smells really, really nice. I enjoy, when I pull off my dust mask after I'm turning, I can smell my garage and it smells wonderful, like cedar. So I enjoy the aspect of it smelling really nice. And when you first turn cedar, it has a really nice, at least the junk cedar trees that I'm dealing with. I think there's lots of different kinds of cedars, but the cedar trees that I get a hold of, they have this almost purplish hue to the heart. So it's got a purple heartwood to it. And I enjoy being able to incorporate the purple aspect of the heartwood along with the very white and yellowy outside of the wood. Sapwood, I think, is what that part's called. So I enjoy the...
Did the cedar get injured in a big war or something? Is that how it got this purple heart?
I don't know.
Wood.
I don't know about that one. But I enjoyed, being able to use contrasting colors. The downside is, well, it's not really too much of a downside. As the wood ages, that purple will turn into more of like a reddish kind of purpley brown, just more of a less vibrant brown color. So that's the only downside is you finish your piece and it's this wonderful purple color to it. And then after a year or two sitting on the shelf, getting UV light, it'll turn more of a brown. So if you anticipate that, it's not that bad.
But you see these little balls? I know, if you're listening, you can't see these little balls, but I'll hold them up. These little aromatic cedar balls that, Joseph's talking about for the exact reason that you're talking about, because they smell great. And I don't know how much I spent on these, but I had to buy them off of Amazon. But just to keep the office, smelling nice. And you're right. They've got a little, I can see the purplish kind of hue on there, but it's not deep purple anymore, obviously. How would you make, could you turn a cedar ball like this? These are little balls, they're the size of a large kind of marble. Is that a wood turning kind of thing, or is that a different
You can
process?
do it on the lathe, and I think most people do. It's probably easiest on the lathe. The spheres are actually a very challenging shape to do on the lathe because you're only turning on one axis, and you have to be perfect in order to turn a sphere only on one axis. So any kind of variation in your tool movement as you're attempting to make the sphere, it's going to turn into something more like a squatty pumpkin. And much to my frustration, I have discovered this. And spheres,
you found out the hard way.
Spheres are really attractive shapes, but you kind of need to make some special jigs and or buy special jigs in order to really make it easy and repeatable to do a sphere on the lathe.
You get plenty of cedar wood down there in Texas. I remember we was a lot of mountain cedar around that area.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Joseph's right. It's a pest tree. In some scenarios, it's definitely one of those allergy trees. So many people are allergic to cedar. I think, taking any of that, harvesting any of that for other uses is probably well appreciated by those folks. So Joseph, awesome hobby. It takes a lot of patience. Clearly you love it, or you wouldn't be able to commit, all the years it takes just for the wood to dry before the fun even begins. Well, I guess, harvesting is some of the fun because you get to be creative about, what's this capable of, what's the potential here. But yeah, there's a commitment, there's a passion here. So my question that I ask on every episode of the StreetClothes podcast is, hey, if you love this so much, if this could pay you the bills, would you or could you quit your day job that we'll talk about here in a second and just do this full time? Probably not.
I say probably not just because it's really hard to pay the bills with wood turning. You have to work really, really hard in order to make it work, whether it's committing to craft fairs on the weekends, hauling out all of your product and then hauling it all back because you didn't sell it all.
I mean, hopefully not hauling it all back,
that's
right?
The intent, but the reality is you have to really peddle your product. And I don't enjoy selling things as much as I enjoy giving something away, and nowhere near as much as I get satisfaction out of just making something. So I really like making things, not selling things. So I don't think that I would really enjoy doing my hobby full time. I think some people, especially now that we have things like YouTube, TikTok, and, other social media platforms that will pay you for your views. I think another way to work hard at the hobby is filming your ability to make something. A lot of people enjoy watching people make things, myself included. And I don't have any video editing abilities, and I don't really want to learn video editing skills. So I want to make woodworking projects and not videos. So, the two main ways that you could make money, or two of the main ways that you can make money, would be making videos, selling at craft fairs. I don't really want to do that. And it's really competitive and hard. And you have to be really, really good, better than myself, in order to sell at something like a gallery. You have to consistently put out high quality materials that other people want to buy. And I make things that I'll make things that people might not necessarily want to buy. They might think, oh, that's neat or novel, but they're not thinking of it as.
But it's not worth $20.
So part of me is like, well, I don't really want to make high-end abstract art with my lathe all the time.
Right.
So the main ways that I could make money on my hobby, I don't really enjoy. What I enjoy most about it is just being away and making something.
Burls, knots, and defects in wood are highly prized in the wood turning trade. What may look like imperfections in a raw block of wood, such as burls, which is a growth on a tree, often result in unique, stunning grain patterns once they're turned, which makes these pieces some of the most sought after by wood turners. Depending on the type of region where you are in the world, that can have a signature style of wood turning. For instance, Scandinavian wood turners often focus on minimalist and functional pieces like bowls and utensils. If you don't believe me, go to IKEA this weekend and check it out. While Japanese artisans are known for their use of lacquer finishes and intricate designs, which showcase the cultural diversity within the craft. Well, let me tell you, this is going off script real quick, so I'll get right back here to what it is your day job is. On that sales conversation, think about this, just kind of let this sit in. I want, like anybody else who's got a hobby out there too, that, is maybe in the same position as you are. It's like, I love this. I just don't even want to, like, I'm not into the sales part of it, right? Because that's going to be a challenge, I think, for a lot of folks, right? Like, sales is not necessarily a natural skill set that most of us are born with. It kind of has it can have a negative connotation depending on your experiences with salespeople in the past. But what I've learned even over the last 7 years in having to sell as a clinician and then now as a business owner, that a large part of selling is just communicating your passion for what it is that's in front of you to someone else. And we all love to do that. Like, you've been doing that for the last half an hour on wood turning, right? Like, you've been selling the idea of this, and even, the concept of the art and the why behind the art, the wood behind the art. Some of the best folks, and I've talked to some of those folks at at the fairs and at the farmers markets and stuff. And like, when you're talking to them and they're selling well, they're not trying to sell you on price or anything else. What they're doing is exactly what you've been doing. It's wood. Did you know that cedar wood has ... Did you know that it's a little bit stronger in this kind of wood? Or, that's got that deep Purple Heartwood. And then like you end up, oh man, this guy's nice. He taught me something. I want to buy this bowl. And you're like, I just got sold to and I didn't even know it. So anyways, think about that. I'm not pushing you in that direction or anything, but it might be inside you and you may not even know it. All right. Clinical day job. You work in a healthcare environment. What is it that you do when you're not in your garage turning wood on a lathe?
Yeah, I am a manager for sterile processing.
Okay. And what does managing a sterile processing department, if anything, have to do with wood turning?
Absolutely nothing.
All right. I think you're maybe the first in this show that has said, not a lot of comparisons at all with my day job. So, Joseph, the people that are tuning in today, if they want to know more about this hobby, even about, maybe some of the pieces that you've made or can made, I don't know if you work on like a commission kind of basis or anything like that, but if they just want to contact you for more info, what's the best way for people to get plugged in with you?
Probably finding me on LinkedIn would probably be one of the fastest ways. I'm not really on social media. Like I said, I don't really enjoy making videos and things like that. So I'm not posting any of my woodworking pieces anywhere. I'm not a big presence on social media, but LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
All right. Sounds great. Yeah. Anyone who's tuning in through LinkedIn, if you've seen this episode on LinkedIn, we'll have Joseph tagged in the show notes, and then we'll try to put his little URL to his LinkedIn page if you want to get connected with this as well for more questions on this wood turning conversation. Joseph, great conversation today. Thank you so much for coming in, for sharing your love of wood and high speed carving of it on some of these devices. So thanks, buddy. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
That was Joseph Martin, a manager of sterile processing, sharing with us what makes his gears turn with the art of wood turning. Thanks for listening to this episode of StreetClothes, where we explore the lives of clinicians outside of the hospital. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please don't hesitate to reach out with an interest that maybe you have taken up outside your department. That's a wrap for this episode of StreetClothes, proudly brought to you by the Healthcare HQ Network. Now, get back to what moves you, because life happens outside of scrubs.